I love it when women ask about testosterone health. It's so important. Testosterone is so commonly thought of as a men's hormone, but it is essential for women to have healthy levels of testosterone. Now, women only need about 1/30th the amount of testosterone as a male to be at a level of optimal health. But that doesn't mean it's any less important. It doesn't mean it should be any less of a part of the conversation about women's health. Just because you need less of something doesn't mean you shouldn't think about it as much. Like humans, we need way less food per day than an elephant. It doesn't mean food is a less important part of our survival and well-being, right? So in a woman, when you get low testosterone, it's not good. Everything becomes a bit more difficult. Sex drive is low, you have mood swings, crying tends to easily happen, anxiety and panic attacks can be common, you can feel tired and have a lack of general motivation, you lose muscle mass and you start gaining non-muscle weight, and it can contribute also to cardiovascular issues. So what can we look at doing to build up testosterone into a healthier place? First of all, if you are exercising, I hope you are, don't do chronic cardio. Don't get sucked into chronic cardio because that's not necessarily a friend in terms of your HPA axis, in terms of your adrenals, in terms of your hormones. You want to focus on strength training. Lifting weights. This strength training is going to build muscle. When you have more muscles, this is going to sensitize you to estrogen, and so your body is going to be careful about its estrogen production, and this is going to help testosterone. Hormones are like a game of musical chairs. You only have a certain number of receptors, and they're going to get filled up. If you got a lot of estrogen circulating, it's going to fill up those chairs. Even if you're producing the testosterone, it's not going to have anywhere to sit down. So by sensitizing the body to estrogen via building muscle, now you've got more seats available for testosterone to get into the game. And on the other hand, if you have a lot of body fat produces estrogen, and it can also cause you to convert more testosterone over into estrogen through a process called aromatization. Aromatization is basically when you have a good hormone and it goes over to the dark side and becomes something that's not supportive necessarily of your health at this stage. And these two hormonal elements that you're asking about here, cortisol to decrease and testosterone to increase, they're very much going to be tied together. Now, cortisol is elevated generally because one is too stressed. That's what it comes down to, and we can go into all kinds of different ways to deal with that. But it's important to understand these two are not independent. These are not operating in isolated silos. These are going to be very related. And as you improve your cortisol levels, your testosterone situation is likely going to also improve. Your body, think of it as a factory producing hormones. It only has a certain production capacity. And if you are stressed all the time, you have a lot of anxiety going on, for a million different reasons, right? Yeah, everyone's got their own stuff going on in their life. No matter what it is, your body is going to think that you're in a fight or flight situation. It's going to think the end is near and we need to do everything we can do to prevent imminent death, right? So it produces cortisol. It takes all the machinery, all the equipment, all the production capacity that would have been used to produce things like progesterone and testosterone and DHEA. All of this stuff gets redirected to producing cortisol because you could be producing plenty of testosterone and progesterone, beauty hormones, all this great sex hormone stuff. But if you get eaten by a tiger, none of that's going to do you any good in your long-term evolutionary biology survival goals. So your body prioritizes cortisol because that is leading you towards, in a primal sense, immediate survival. Well, that's great, but if you have this all the time, you're in a little bit of a problem, right? So by supporting the adrenals and ovaries, you're going to have a lot better testosterone production because for us guys, it's a little bit different. Now, stress can certainly still hurt testosterone production for males, but we have different organs to produce testosterone. For the women, it's coming from adrenals and ovaries. And so we can look at adaptogens as being a great way to deal with the strain that these organs are going through. So we can look at things like basically what we have in our tranquility chocolate is a great place to start, right? We have ashwagandha, we have reishi mushroom, then we can also look at Hoshu Wu that we have in there and Mucuna. Then going into some other things, we can look, for example, at holy basil, rhodiola, Siberian ginseng. These are all great adaptogenic herbs that, because likely the sources of stress in your life, whether it's relationships, stuff going on out in the world, work, whatever it is likely not going away, right? The stress brought into our lives by technology is not getting any better. There's going to be a new iPhone comes out next year that's going to supposedly do great things for you, right? But it's not going to make your life less stressful. You may be even more stressed. So how are we going to give our body the adaptability to deal with this stress and thrive in spite of these external stressors, to be more resilient in spite of external sources of stress? Adaptogens are one of the incredible ways to do this. You can also look at things like astragalus is another one of my favorites, especially if you need a bit more physical energy. And then also in terms of, now I don't know where you are age-wise, right? But certainly as women progress through life and a biological clock is a realistic thing, it's harder to produce hormones, right? Your body starts slowing down in that department. One of the most promising cutting edge things here is NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. And this is what's called an NAD precursor. NAD is an important part of what your body uses to form ATP. ATP, pure cellular energy. So it goes through a couple of steps here. But basically, NMN is one of the most promising ways to improve cellular ATP. And if we look at some of the animal research that's been done in terms of ovarian rejuvenation and restoration of fertility in these animals with NMN supplementation at a fairly high dose, but not unreasonable, it's pretty exciting. Now, NMN is something that's very easily, it's fragile. It's very easily destroyed through digestion. So you want to look for something that's going to be a liposomal NMN, so you can swish it in your mouth and start absorbing right into your bloodstream before your body has a chance to damage any of it. So that is one of the most exciting and promising things in that regard. I know with Ana Blanca, she was on some bioidentical hormones. It's the way life goes. And she started taking this NMN, and she started having some symptoms in terms of skin health and various other things of hormonal imbalance. And it turned out that by taking the NMN, her body had kind of brought back up its own natural hormone production. And so because she hadn't changed her level of bioidentical hormones that she was taking, now her levels of many hormones were too high. A good problem to have in a way, right? So she was able to really back down on the bioidenticals because her body had kicked back into production, which is pretty amazing. And wow, what a blessing to have access to something like this. And NMN, so far, it's still in relatively early stages as these things go, but it's one of the most promising anti-aging and longevity supplements out there. Now, outside of this, how are we going to give you the right food to produce healthy hormones? Well, healthy fats are the key thing here. I have no idea where you exist on the vegan carnivore spectrum, but you want to be incorporating a variety of fats and probably some animal world fats, even if it's just fish oil and ghee, to be getting these really high quality saturated fats, the conjugated linolenic acids, the long chain omega-3s that you're not going to really get as much from plant sources. You can get some things from algae oil, for example, but look, wherever you are, just understand that there are certain things you need to be really careful about getting as precursors to hormones. And whatever else you want to do to reduce stress, there's a million things. I think we need to make a dedicated video on this pretty soon, but you could be meditating, spending time in nature, doing relaxing breathing practices. You could be doing Wim Hof method breathing. You could be doing the Buteyko method breathing, any other form of yogic pranayama style breathing that you enjoy. You could be taking magnesium glycinate, magnesium L-threonate. You could be taking any one of the herbs that we talked about earlier, reishi, holy basil, rhodiola, Hoshu Wu. These are all spectacular. You could be taking L-theanine. You could be taking phosphatidylserine, often seen in a supplement as PS100. So lots of options here. I mean, just working out is going to help you process this stuff better. Doing yoga, taking infrared saunas, whatever, and how many of these things you can manage to get into a day to establish more stability in your life, the better. And then vitamin D is another huge one, important hormonal precursor. Very few people are getting enough of it, by being out in nature, but by all means do download the D-Minder app. And this, you open it up before you go out in the sun, you tell it, it automatically picks up where you are in the world, what time of day it is, so it knows the angle of the sun in the sky in terms of how much UVB is going to be coming through, so how much sunlight you're going to be exposed to. That's going to be helping you to produce vitamin D. And you tell it the amount of clothing that you have on, so you know how much skin is exposed, and it will you push start when you go out in the sun, and it will count up your vitamin D live as you're producing it. And you also put in there like your skin tone, because people with darker color skin don't make as much vitamin D, unfortunately. That's why, in for example, the African American population, vitamin D deficiency is a massive, massive problem because they have to spend a lot more time out in the sun to make an equivalent amount of vitamin D to somebody with lighter skin. It's one of those things that I really wish more people would talk about and would get more attention. And so you can see how much you're making, and that's fantastic, but you really want to think about supplementing with a vitamin D3 supplement on a daily basis and taking that in conjunction with vitamin K2 because you are going to really increase your calcium absorption as a result of taking D3. And K2 is going to make sure that calcium goes to the good places like your bones and not to the places like your heart where you don't really need the extra calcium. Quality sleep, of course, with cortisol and testosterone, all hormonal health, basically every area of your health that there is going to be super important. We have other videos going into depth about this. If you have questions about sleep optimization, I love talking about it, but we'll save that for a different video. You could certainly speak with a doctor about possibly using DHEA either orally or with a cream, and this would be something in the range usually of 10 to 15 milligrams. It's something that's available that you can just buy, but don't do it like that. It's a very powerful and potentially a tool that could throw you off if not done right and with the appropriate testing to understand where your levels are naturally at. So DHEA can be great for certain people, but do it with a doctor to help you understand where you are, where you're going, how you're progressing, and how you may need to adjust the dose to stay in optimum health. And last but definitely not least, have more orgasms. Important part of healthy testosterone production, important part of stress reduction, and important part of health for everybody. Whether it's solo, with a partner, just make sure you're getting there on a regular basis. Okay, I really hope that 3-6 months from now, your hormones end up being in a much more beautiful place. I look forward to hearing about it as you go along. And I hope that, actually, I want to say thank you for asking this question, because these two imbalances are so incredibly common. So I'm hoping that this video has helped more than one person. I hope this touches a lot of people, and a lot of people can get to a happier place hormonally, because when those things get in line, everything about life starts to get better.